Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts.
So it was a strange one when the daft ad was shown to us, and you have an ad for this bungalow effectively in the back of a property, and you see Jason B is the person to contact. And then obviously it was pointed out to us, not just because it's an interesting looking ad, but because it's in the home of Jason Bonney, who's currently serving an 8.5-year sentence for his role in the Regency Hotel murder. What do we know about this property, I suppose?
So basically it's a 2-bedroom apartment or bungalow, and it's, as you said, situated on Jason Bonney's property, but it's in the really leafy area of Portmarnock. So
how leafy is Portmarnock?
I'm from Tallaght, so I'd consider it very leafy,
okay,
but I don't know. You
no,
maybe you wouldn't, because you're from.
It is quite leafy.
I think it's quite leafy. Well, yeah. And you also go by price. So if you can rent a bungalow on a property for over 2,200 per month, I would consider that leafy.
Okay, that's officially a leafy suburb.
So it's obviously a nice area in North County Dublin, and the property is massive. Obviously, we've done stories before in Jason Bonney's mansion there. So this is a bungalow on that property, and it's 2 bedrooms. I think 1 single bedroom, 1 double bedroom, bathroom, lovely spacious kind of living area. And yeah, that went for rent on daft for €2,250 per month. And when we seen it, it had been viewed 700 times already. And then when we tried to contact the Jason B number, as you said, the ad had been taken down. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting, I suppose. I suppose it shows for renters, like it's a wild world out there for how much people are being asked to pay, because this is a kind of it's a bungalow on a property, and Jason Bonney's house is an incredible home in Portmarnock. It's in one of these private estates where there's a security guard full time at the door. I think was somebody from Westlife or Boyzone or somebody used to live there. I can't remember which one.
Brian McFadden and Kerry Katona actually before their very public split years ago, they lived there. So it's a gated community.
Yeah. So I mean, we do know, of course, when we looked into it, then there is a bit of a history regarding the planning permission issues these are all on public record if anybody can look them up regarding that bungalow.
Yeah, so Jason Bonney applied for planning permission to convert this bungalow. He wanted to extend it and add a bathroom, I believe. This was in 2016, which is ironically around the time that the Regency Hotel killing happened, and just months before he was arrested for it. So this was refused by Fingal County Council. In the application, he said he wanted his daughter and grandson to live there. Then he subsequently appealed to An Bord Pleanála, and they also rejected it. And then just very shortly afterwards, then he was arrested in relation to his role in the Regency Hotel attack. So this was obviously 2016, and as far as we know, there wasn't any subsequent applications made, because it was, An Bord Pleanála made the ruling. So,
like, he was an interesting sort of character, Jason Bonney. He grew up, I believe, in North Dublin, and he certainly became a very, very wealthy man. You can look back on the property registers and the deeds and see that he bought a house in or around the North Inner City, a couple of homes in near Buckingham Street, where the Hutch family would have come from, and he rapidly made a load of deals. I mean, a lot of money going through his hands. He seemed to do really well out of the property boom. And he was then living a fairly anonymous life until he was picked up in connection with the Regency Hotel.
Yeah. So he's a former boxer as well, wasn't he? Yeah.
He was involved in a lot of... he ran a boxing club, a local boxing club. He had family who were quite successful boxers. He was involved in that kind of... that end of boxing rather than the kind of higher end. Yeah. He was also sort of had ties with, I suppose, Republican people. but he was very much under the radar.
Yeah, he was. And sorry, just to go back to what I said earlier, the original plans that were refused by Fingal County Council, it was to convert the garage into a 2-bed apartment, and that was refused. And then the appeal was refused by An Bord Pleanála, and now 8 years later, we have the 2-bed apartment that was up for rent in Daft. So that's what we're obviously, we're deeming that to be illegal for that reason, because his original plan and application was refused. But Jason Bonney's obviously he had gone under the radar until he was caught up in the Regency attack, and since all his properties and this mansion in particular has caught the eye in Portmarnock, and he's obviously the money that he seems to have earned has kind of come to light, because even during the trial we heard about how he was driving an X5 when he's believed to have given one of the drivers a lift, or one of the gunmen a lift.
Yeah, I mean, which was ultimately proven. I mean, I was there in court when a lot of that Jason Bonney evidence was given, because they ran simultaneously, obviously, with Jerry Hutch's trial for murder. But Jason Bonney and his co-accused, the guy called Paul Murphy, they were accused of and ultimately convicted of facilitating the Regency Hotel murder. It was a lesser charge, and there was also the second part of their conviction was that they facilitated it for the Hutch organised crime gang. So there's kind of two parts to it. But the evidence, Paul Murphy was, he was a very sort of, they were both there every day, actually. They went in and out of court. You could see them sitting down having a cup of tea and things. It was sort of bizarre because there was obviously at certain points there was armed Gardaí protecting the whole trial, but they were walking in and holding the doors open for people, and both short in stature kind of guys. But Paul Murphy's evidence was maybe less controversial, but Jason Bonney's evidence was hugely controversial and very much condemned by the judges in their judgment. Yeah,
because he tried to blame his poor deceased dad and said he got 2 witnesses to come into the witness box and try and suggest that it was his father who had passed away at that time, driving the BMX5, and the judge in her delivering her judgment basically said that this was amazing stuff, that somebody could suggest this, that somebody was being blamed beyond the grave, essentially. So that obviously didn't go down too well in the special criminal court,
because there was the evidence was that he had left his home in this BMX where the reg was visible, and that car had been seen then travelling towards the Regency and part of the convoy. And his evidence basically was that he wasn't driving it, and that it must have been somebody else driving it.
Yeah.
And he did have 2 witnesses, and those witnesses, he had 2 witnesses, but one woman in particular who gave him an alibi effectively. And her evidence was contradicted by Jason Bonney's brother-in-law, who Jason Bonney's brother-in-law was quite powerful actually on the stand, and he spoke about his father-in-law, Jason Bonney's father, and how he had met him on the day of the Regency, and that Jason Bonney's father was absolutely not driving any car. It was quite kind of brave. So what Jason Bonney ultimately, he was convicted for 8.5 years.
Yeah, so he was convicted for 8.5 years. They obviously found they weren't happy, as we just said, with what he was trying to claim in court. And he's in Wheatfield prison currently. As you said, he wasn't really known. He kind of had kept a low profile, but he did have a conviction for assault going back to 2011, I believe, where he basically assaulted a man who was a businessman who was allegedly fired his daughter, and it was a district court assault offence, so he was just jailed for a couple of months. But other than that, he wouldn't have been very well known, but he was obviously building up a high business profile for himself around Dublin. And he's currently appealing that sentence, so the 8.5 year sentence. He was found to have been the driver who brought Kevin Flatcap Murray away from the scene of St. Vincent's GA Club, where they went in the wake of the Regency Hotel. And then obviously Flatcap Murray, as we know, died in 2017. He had motor neuron disease, so he wasn't able to be brought to trial. But we all have seen the pictures of him with the flat cap running out of the hotel taken by the Sunday World. So that was what Jason Bonney's role was, that he drove him away from the scene, and the Special Criminal Court found this. So he has an 8.5-year sentence now. There's been reports in the media that he's not happy with this. He's been telling everyone in prison that he's not happy with the finding, and there is an appeal being lodged now. So I suppose that will be the next step.
Yeah, there'd be exactly. I mean, he was very. We were told at the time that he felt very confident that he would beat the charge. That because he was able to produce witnesses. He also had a neighbour who was a witness anyway, at least to throw doubt on who was driving the car. That he felt that those witnesses would mean that he would ultimately be found not guilty. But in fact, he was, treated. The judges were very, very strong on him, and spoken, that really condemned the evidence that was given on his behalf. And also the judge, Justice Tara Burns, explicitly sort of, made reference to the fact that his father, who wasn't there to defend himself, was ultimately, he tried to put blame on him. I mean, it's a funny position he's in relative to Gerry Hutch.
Yeah, because they're close friends, it was said in court anyway, wasn't it?
Well, it was said in court, and it was always sort of unclear about, what sort of relationship they had. Paul Murphy described not really knowing Gerry Hutch, but being a friend of Eddie Hutch, who was ultimately shot dead just a couple of days after the Regency.
Because they were both taxi drivers, weren't they?
They were both taxi drivers, and Eddie Hutch had been in contact with him in the run up to it. He also spoke about but Jason Bonney, it was never fully clear about what sort of long-term relationship, but we do know he was buying property in or around the North Inner City. Do we know why? He did make this application for it to be converted into a dwelling. I presume it's a kind of an outhouse originally. Do we know what he had planned for it to be used for?
Yeah, so he basically said that the development was intended as a home for his daughter, and at the time, his 18-month-old her 18-month-old son, his grandson, it said in the application that they were waiting for social housing, and they were told it could be 8 years or so to get that. So that was why he wanted to convert it, and he wanted to add a private gym and a bathroom and all these kind of things as well. So that was obviously rejected. And then in the on board Planala appeal, then he kind of told about how he, this is why he wanted it, and he was really unhappy with the decision. But then that was rejected as well. So, that was obviously his reasoning. But now it's gone up on Daft, and we don't know. Usually, when an ad's taken down from Daft, it means that it's been rented, but we don't know the nature of this or what the circumstances are. Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a couple of years into his sentence, I suppose, and he'll be entitled to automatic remission. I mean, he has a lot of wealth to go back to, at least, where I think Paul Murphy didn't have 2 shillings to rub together, to be honest.
Yeah, it seemed that way. Yeah, he got they obviously got hefty sentences as well.
Yeah,
for it was obviously conspiracy to help the Hutch organised crime gang commit a crime. But Paul Murphy got 9 years, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what been determined by the judges was this crime had been committed, and you could see the masked gunmen running towards these cars in St. Vincent's GA Club. I saw some of the CCTV myself. So it was not just in the planning of it where they may have said, people might have said they didn't know what was going to happen necessarily, but certainly in the aftermath, they were driven away in convoy. And, what we do know about some of that evidence is that the investigation to the Regency continues on.
Yeah.
And there have been, there continues to be an investigation into the role other people played and into some of the circumstances surrounding the Regency, not to get very specifically into it.
Yeah, because obviously there were how many gunmen was there? There was 5 gunmen, including Fat Cap, and there was 2 drivers. So you do the maths there. There was obviously more people involved in this.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it goes on.
And then I suppose, sorry, I meant to mention earlier as well, it's just kind of the timing. I think I touched on it at the start, but the timing around the Regency attack and this application were quite interesting as well. Probably a coincidence, but it was like 5 days after the Regency attack where he was refused the permission to demolish that garage and build a 2-bedroom apartment. And then there was only 10 days later, his BMX5 Jeep, which we now know was used in the Regency attack, that was seized. And when it was seized, he told Gardaí that basically their attention to him was making his life a living hell, that his son had fled the country, and that basically love and light had gone out of his home. That was what was later said in court. So it's just kind of interesting that this all happened in a very close period. And then a few months later, then the appeal to An Bord Pleanála was rejected, and then he was arrested.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, there's no doubt he became a target for the Kinahan cartel at some point, though it does look like these things have died down.
Yeah.
But anyway, he'll have a good home to come back to anyway, that's for sure, when he comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and maybe a lot of rent from this property.
Who knows? Thanks very much, Emer.
Thanks, Niall.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.